Kill Complacency, a podcast that inspires growth and intentionality and helps you overcome your greatest obstacles.
My guest today is Jamie Smart, and he's in the United Kingdom, and he is best-selling author, speaker, does a lot in regards to helping us think better. He has a book called Clarity, another book called Results, and he's built businesses, done a lot of stuff, but as is often the case, people that do extraordinary things. So Jamie, could you kind of take us back to your childhood and maybe who you are and how you got to be where you are today?
Sure. I grew up on the west coast of Canada in British Columbia, which was an amazing place to grow up. It was a pretty normal kind of upbringing, except that my dad was alcoholic and my mom was the kind of person who's attracted to alcoholics. What I didn't know at the time was not entirely great psychological and emotional environment to grow up. I didn't know any difference. So that was just what it was. But when I was about 12 years old, I discovered something amazing, which changed everything. It was alcohol, which was when I drank alcohol, I felt great and I felt comfortable in my own skin and I felt confident. I could talk to people. So I kind of worked on the basis at that point that I guess I'd been born with an alcohol deficiency. I needed to sort that out. And so for the next 18 years, 19 years, my life kind of revolved around alcohol. And I was, I went to university, I got jobs. I did very well in the corporate world. I was working as a program manager running large corporate programs, but those were incredibly stressful. And the alcohol was kind of the fuel that allowed me to operate at that level, or at least that's how it looked to me at the time. And then in 1996, I got married. And within a couple of months, my then wife was threatening to leave because of the drinking, which turned out to be a lot harder than I thought because I stopped drinking. And according to everyone was like, if Jamie would just stop drinking, his life would get so much better. But what I didn't realize is that by stopping drinking, I was effectively off my meds. And so after 6 or 7 months without a drink, I was suicidal, depressed, miserable, in a terrible state. So I got into recovery and I didn't think that would work for me. I could see how it would work for everyone else. And I was like, yeah, I get it, but I'm different. But I was sitting there in a meeting one Sunday afternoon and I was in a kind of relaxed state and listening to people tell their story and that sort of, and I had an insight. Now I didn't know it was an insight, but a fresh thought came to me. It wasn't a thought I thought myself. It came from outside of my thinking system. And the thought was, maybe even though you're so smart and you know that this can't work for you, maybe it could work anyway. Maybe there's something you've missed. Maybe you don't know everything. And I was like, that was hope, because I was sitting there, Marty, and I was in despair because I knew this wasn't going to work. I just didn't really have a better offer. It was sit in meetings or kill myself. So I was in a hopeless situation and I knew life was going to suck from here on in. And then all of a sudden I have this insight. It's like, it could be different than you're imagining. And I'd never thought that before. And so I threw myself into it. And that was a little over 29 years ago. And I haven't had a drink since. And I feel incredibly grateful for that. Before that, I thought anything to do with psychology or spirituality or anything like that was hippie bullshit. I was not interested in it. And it was, today, spiritual understanding is, that's the foundation of my life. So that was an absolute game changer for me.
That thought you had that it might change, you said you didn't know where it came from. Is that just because you'd never had that thought before?
At the time, it was just like, oh, I'm glad I thought that because I never thought that before. But now what I see is, no, that's an innate capacity of the human mind. We have an innate capacity for insight and realization. It's how our minds bring our cognitive system, in a way, into greater alignment with reality. Because, of course, as human beings, Marty, we live in a dynamic, ever-changing world. And on the one hand, we need to have a kind of map of reality to be able to understand the world. But because the world is changing, that map needs to be updated. My problem was my map was kind of impervious to updates. I had it set up so that I couldn't really see or hear anything new because my perception was warped by alcoholism, right? And so what that was like a chink of light breaking through the tenting of my perceptual system. But that turns out to be a very normal, reliable capacity of the human mind. Today, it's something I rely on all the time. I know, oh, you've got an innate capacity for realization. So you're going to have realizations about stuff, even if you don't know it at them. So it looks to me like a built-in capacity of everyone's mind.
Talk to me, if we can, a little on this, Jamie, because my wife and I had a discussion recently. She coaches women, and she had asked women just on a Facebook group what they need. Do they need information? Do they need accountability? Or do they need something else? And I told her, I said, I think people have the information. It kind of maybe to your point, like we know what we need to do, but a lot of times that knowledge isn't enough. Is it that we're not tuning into that voice, or is that we don't want it?
I think the answer might be kind of something subtly different. And it looks like this to me, Mark. And this is going to sound extreme, but I'm kind of
No,
extreme.
go for it.
I work on the basis that every single person is doing what makes sense to them based on their current understanding of reality. Now, their current understanding of reality includes the world, themselves, their place in it, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So they're doing what makes sense. So let's say I'm smoking 30 cigarettes a day, and I go to the doctor. And the doctor says, Jamie, I notice you've come in here smoking cigarettes. Not only is smoking cigarettes not allowed in the doctor's surgery, but we strongly recommend you don't smoke. And I'm like, no kidding. Why is that, doc? He's like, well, I don't know if you've heard, but smoking causes lung cancer. It's bad for your breathing. It's bad for other people. It leads to everything from amputations to early heart disease, that sort of thing. Smoking's a bad deal. If all it took was information, I would go, geez, doc, thank you for telling me. I'm done with it. That's that. But that's not reality. Like information on that basis, it can be useful, but it's never the thing that's going to allow someone to genuinely change. The thing that has to happen for someone to change is their embodied understanding of reality needs to update. They need a system update. Right? Of some sort. We're all built for that. We've all had thousands of those over the years. But the places where we tend to notice that we haven't got them is the places where we've been struggling to change something or hoping to change something. So more information, often while you're like, for instance, people will go on training courses. I used to do this. I would go on a training course and I'd be there on a training course that's all this information and we're doing some exercises and that sort of thing. And at some point in the training course, I have an insight. I'm like, oh, I know what to do. And then I attribute that change to the information or the teacher or the materials or the subject matter, never realizing actually it was that innate capacity for realization updated your understanding of reality so that what didn't used to make sense suddenly does. So the thing that didn't look possible suddenly looks straightforward, or at least like a step you can take. Does that make sense, Marty?
It does. But how do we help people tap into that?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, that's basically my full-time job. So because the first thing you need to do is point out to people that that's the thing that makes the difference, because we live in a culture. Like, here's a great example. If you walk into your local magazine store, news aid, there are going to be magazine racks full of magazines, and every magazine is going to say on the cover, 5 top tips for having a beach body, the 4 keys for becoming wealthy, the 7 secrets to losing weight fast, the 9 things you have to do to attract the right male or the right female or whatever you're looking for. And we like those. We buy those magazines because additive tips are like crack cocaine to the intellect, to the conscious mind. The conscious mind loves that stuff. And that's why clickbait works. That's why if you're writing an article, it can be great to say, the 7 things you need to figure out to kill complacency or whatever, because we know that that's like crack to the intellect. We also know, even as we buy the magazine, that it's not going to work, right? It doesn't work. If someone is actually able to make those changes, like they read them, they go, oh, why didn't I think of that? But they don't make those changes unless they have a realization. And if they have a realization, it's the thing that came from within them rather than from the magazine. So the first thing I'm going to say is, if people want to have more of that kind of insight, that kind of realization, they need to get interested in how it actually works and what they've got going for them. And they need to recognize that they're not going to find it in top tips and 7 habits of whatever. They're going to find it by looking where it is. And so that, you asked, how can people get more of that? Get curious about what is that? What is that source of realization that you've been relying on your whole life? Most of the places in your life where you've needed that, it's been there, right?
Yeah.
It's only the places where you haven't got it or that it's not shown up yet that it's frustrating.
Is this, Jamie, why people push like meditation so much? It's so we can get to that quiet place and we can listen to those answers that we need?
I think it's one of the benefits of meditation is that people often have realizations and insights about what makes sense to them. And so I'm never going to diss meditation, but I meet lots of people who are committed meditators who don't realize that they've got this innate capacity for realization, the thing that does the heavy lifting. This model, if you like, this way of thinking about it looks to me like realization, Marty, is kind of an overlooked superpower that people have going for them. And it's not one that gets a lot of airplay because it's not that attractive to the conscious mind. The intellect goes, oh yeah, got it, rather than going, oh, let's get interested in this. What is that? How does it work? How do I have more of that? So yeah, that's how it looks to me.
As you were talking, I brought that up because I feel like oftentimes we stay stuck in whatever, smoking cigarettes or whatever you want to put in there, because we're so busy and we stay so consumed in our little world. That's why I thought of meditation maybe being a help to get us to that realization.
I think it can certainly be a help. The thing that I've noticed is profoundly valuable for human beings is spending time in the state of meditation. So the practice of meditating, is one way of finding your way into the state of meditation. There are many ways. Like I've asked thousands of people this question over the years. I asked them, when do you get your best idea? When do you get your best ideas? And the answer's always the same. In the shower, when I first wake up in the morning, when I'm just drifting off to sleep at night, when I'm out for a walk, when I'm at the gym, when I'm on holiday, when I'm traveling to and from work. Inevitably, people get their best ideas when they're not thinking about the thing they're hoping to get ideas about, when they're to some degree in a meditative space, regardless of whether they're meditator. And everyone can identify those places where they tend to get more access to that source of realization.
Yeah, that's powerful. Talk to me a little bit, Jamie, about building your company, Salad, right? And then you realize kind of where you can go with the Sid Banks philosophy, right?
Well, I'll tell you the story. I built a company called Salad in 2003 and built a very vibrant list of, it was basically an educational products and training company. It was in the early days of Google AdWords and email newsletters. So we had a newsletter with about 90,000 people on it. Business was good. And I read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, in 2007. And I was like, that's it. I need to be going on mini retirements. I need to get my business running on autopilot. So we spent some time, we got the business, so it just needed a few hours input from me each week. And then I went off for my first mini retirement, which was a ski holiday at Whistler in BC. And I was like, this is going to be great. I'm at the pinnacle of my definition of success, and I'll get better at skiing, and it's going to be fantastic. And after 6 weeks, I was miserable with sore feet and feeling off purpose and off track. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong because according to the rules of my industry, I should have been doing great.
Sure.
And so I was like back to the drawing board. And I hired a coach and I started working with him. He was, unbeknownst to me, he was working from this understanding that I now teach. And at first, it just looked like nonsense. But because I'd already sent the check and I was committed to working with him for a while, I said, well, I'll look at it. And I started having realization. And my first realization, Marty, was I saw, and this was just a few weeks in, I saw, oh, everything you've been looking for outside of you is already there with you. Now, I don't mean like cool shoes and wristwatches, but all the feelings, all the experiences of security, peace, of love, of fulfillment, of joy, of well-being, they only come from within. They don't come from outside. You know, George Carlin once said, looking to material factors to give you a feeling of satisfaction or well-being is like taping sandwiches to your body to try and satisfy a sense of hunger. It made sense to me, right? My second insight, Marty, was I saw, oh, the fact that a person can even see or hear or feel means they have an innate capacity for resilience, realization, and transformation. It means they've already got perfect mental health. This was huge for me in working with my clients because immediately I just became so much more hopeful for my client. And that started rubbing
Sure.
off. But then my third insight into this understanding didn't come till June of that year. So kind of 6 months in. And I was in LA. I was attending a mastermind group. And I saw some recordings of Sid Banks and went to sleep that night. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, holy shit, this is Prince. This understanding is for psychology, what the discovery of germs was to medicine. Because I don't know if you know, but psychology is currently a pre-principles field. It doesn't have a paradigm. There's no widely accepted foundational set of facts about how the mind works. There's various schools of thought and theories of personality and rules of thumb, but there are like 800 schools of talk therapy. There's no widely accepted basis for how the mind works. And I suddenly realized, oh, this is a paradigm for psychology. So I called up my office. I said, we're getting out of the old business we're in. There are principles for psychology. We're changing direction. That was in June 2009. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Wow. So just like that, you make a decision and you go full steam ahead into...
Yeah, well, full steam to a degree. I mean, I started immediately talking about it to my audience and running programs and that sort of thing. But there was still a certain amount of turning the ship around. You know, for instance, we had people at that point who were enrolled on NLP practitioner courses. I knew what the right direction was. You know, I had a vision, Marty, which was I saw a future where every child is born to in a world where all the adults already know about this, just like we were born to adults who already know about the fact of germs. That looked like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm curious with that statement. Have you read the book Fahrenheit 452?
No, I've read Fahrenheit 451.
Or 451, what? Yeah. You know, in it, a mindless world, right? Everybody's programmed to show up and do their thing. And to some extent, I can kind of see that with the way we get programmed through social media now. But your vision is completely contrary to that, right? Where people are realizing their own ability to think and solve problems. And it's not this, in 2020, everyone went out and bought toilet paper because it was broadcast one way or the other, right? We weren't thinking like there's other ways to wipe my butt. But I recently did that book, Fahrenheit 451. Jamie, I'm in full agreement with you. Like, we have so much potential within us. And I want to help people tap into that. Super happy you're on. But how do we get your vision to come to light when I feel like we have these, you know, it's almost countercultural right now with social media and stuff to fight it?
I'll tell you how it looks to me, Marty. It looks to me, this includes social media and everything else that's going on. Everyone's doing what makes sense at their current level of understanding. So the thing that I'm interested in is that almost everyone that I meet has a paradigm for their reality that has them believe they're at the effect of a world out there with power over how they feel. And so what I know is that when people wake up to the truth of who they really are and what they've got going for them, it unleashes all kinds of creativity, confidence, passion, purpose, direction, peace of mind, well-being, security, all that sort of stuff. That doesn't mean they stop using social media or stop watching news or stop watching TV, but it means that they're more attuned to their own inner source of wisdom and direction and guidance, and less likely to get hijacked. You know, one of the ways that social media has spread so effectively is by hijacking people's limbic systems, right? Like weaponizing anger and fear and desire and that sort of thing. So having a better understanding of who you are and what you've got going for you just makes you a little more immune to that. Doesn't make you completely immune to anything, because of course we're having the human experience. And the thing about the human experience is it's very compelling. I mean, if everyone else is anything like mine, it's very compelling. So just understand, all I'm interested in is, because how it looks to me is, if people can just see this one thing, it opens up huge possibilities and opportunities in everything they're doing. I got nothing to say, Marty, about what people should or shouldn't be doing, what they should or shouldn't be watching, what they should or shouldn't be believing or paying attention to. But I know that if they get eyes for how their experience is created and who they really are, they're going to make better decisions for themselves and for everyone else.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it's living that life of purpose rather than just filling up our time with stuff.
I think so. And I think that as you wake up to the truth of your nature, you automatically become more aligned with purpose and direction.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really good. That's my whole goal with this podcast is to help people just be more intentional and live a fuller, better life.
I think it's great.
Yeah, that's my thesis. So when I started studying you, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Talk to me about your 2 books. You've got Results and Clarity, right?
Yeah, so Clarity was my first book. That first came out in 2013, and then the 10th anniversary edition came out in 2023. And I'm really, really pleased with it. It's a great starting point for anyone who wants to get a better understanding of how their mind works and who they really are. It starts where we started this podcast, actually, is I start with my story and then take people as best I can on a kind of just a step-by-step, point-by-point guide to how to see this for yourself. Because the thing that's kind of interesting about it is it's not a book of tips and tricks and how-tos. Rather, it's taking you on a journey where you wake up to a capacity that you already have. Because once you see it, you'll never unsee it. So if you look at the reviews, it's sort of a U-shaped curve where you've got a bunch of people going 5 stars, this transformed my life, totally amazing. And a bunch of 1 stars going, what even is this? I can't read it. There's no actionable advice. But it's because it's not a prescriptive model. It's not saying do this, and this. It's an understanding. And then Results is just, okay, how do you take that and use that in the business context? How do you see it in running a business or growing a business or starting a business? So that's what Results is about. And Results became a Sunday Times bestseller. I don't know if it's on Audible anymore. I need to speak to them, actually. But the audiobook of Results is one of my favorite things that I've made.
I'm going to look it up later. I love Audible. What makes it special? What makes it good?
When I did that one particularly, I gave myself carte blanche to go off-piste and tell stories. And there's lots of additional material.
Extra stuff. Yeah.
But I think for some reason, because I got the rights to Results back from my publisher, they'd had the deal with Audible, and I think they may have taken the book down. So I need to get in touch with Audible and get them to put it back up.
Yeah. I just released a book, and it's not too hard to do the Audible thing. Yeah. You could completely do it or hand it off to a team member to do it. So especially if it's as good as you say it is.
It certainly is, in my opinion.
It seems to me, and of course, we rewound your story and told it rather quick, but it seems to me that you seem the type of person that makes a decision and moves forward. Is that part of the whole clarity thing with how we're wired? Like, we don't need to ride the fence like some people do?
What I'm going to say, Marty, is that, and again, it really ties back to what I said about people always do what makes sense to them at their current understanding of reality. So for instance, when I was in 1998, I went on a weekend training course about the mind, first course about the mind I'd ever been on. I go on this training course and I had 2 insights. The first was, like, up till then, Marty, I had a job and all the work I'd done had been kind of like I'd fallen into it. Like I hadn't really chosen it. I found myself in it. And I'm on this course and I suddenly realized it was another insight. It's like, oh, you're co-creating your reality and you always have been. You just didn't realize it, but you had a part to play in this. You're responsible. I thought, well, if I'm responsible, then I can change it. The other realization I had was the person who was teaching the course. It was the most interesting course I'd ever been on. It was a totally different style of teaching, telling stories and doing coaching demonstrations. And I was like, I want to do that. So I quit my job 2 weeks later. But the reason I could do that, the reason I could make that decision was because my reality had shifted. I was living in a different world to the world I'd been living in before I went on that course. Same with the thing when I suddenly realized, oh, these principles are to psychology what the discovery of germs was to medicine. I'm living in a different world. So the things that made sense yesterday, which might be, playing both sides of the fence or prevaricating or thinking, oh, there's something I should be doing, but what is it? Which is actually where I'd been for the first 6 months of that year. I was feeling off track and off purpose. I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing? I don't know. Maybe it's this and that. And then I go from that to boom. Oh, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Let's go. I think how it looks when people look at my story is, wow, Jamie gets an idea and then he just goes for it. But actually what it is when my reality reorganizes in such a way that that's what makes sense, then of course I go for it. But I think that's what we all do. If I've got an advantage, Marty, it's that I'm deliberately these days orienting myself to the fact that once I see it a certain way, that's what I'll do. So putting myself in a position to have realizations.
Jamie, I can't help but think of the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Have you read that book?
A long time ago.
But it's very much about this, right? The cheese station 3, there's cheese there. There's a couple little mice, Skiff and Scurry, who immediately know what they need to do and they're gone. But the other guys are wrestling with it, right? Like they know there's no cheese, but they struggle through moving on. So
Yeah.
I love what you said there. You are looking to grow into, this innate ability that you're mindful of. What advice do you give to the guy that is struggling with that? Hemp and Hall in that book.
Yeah, three things. Number one, what I'm going to suggest is what I'm talking about would help him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to decide, is what I'm saying have some merit to it? Does it sound like I'm on to something?
Yes.
And if they're listening and they're like, no, it doesn't, then they don't need to do anything else. If it sounds like I'm on to something, you got to ask yourself, would life be sweeter if you had a trust in who you are and what you've got going for you? If you knew that you're going to be okay no matter what, that you can do anything and you can deal with anything. I was speaking to one of my mentors once. We were having coffee and I had a sudden realization. What I realized was, oh, you don't need things to be any particular way in order to be okay. In our society, we've got all kinds of ideas of how things need to be in order for it to be okay. Almost all of that is made up. And I saw a thing by Ray Dalio. It was really interesting. He said, because of the world he works in with high finance, he works with a lot of people who, for one reason or another, go bankrupt. And he said, and it's often the same, they're terrified of it as it's kind of looming. And then it happens and they're kind of dazed and broken and it's tough for about 2 weeks. And then they're like, oh, I'm okay. Everything's okay. And it's like the noise has dissipated and they're peaceful, they're clear, and they're back in touch with their own wisdom and connection and presence and that sort of thing, because they thought that things needed to be a certain way for them to be okay. And it wasn't true. So that first question, am I on to something? Second question, would your life be sweeter if you had more trust in who you are and what you've got going for you? And then step three is make it a priority. Learn about this stuff. I've got books. I've got countless hours of recordings you can listen to online. And if you start looking in this direction and making it a priority, you'll start having insights and it'll start changing your life in a positive way that's more aligned with how you're set up for this.
That's profound. I love that you said, things don't have to be just like we expect. And I know that if I have a bad day or whatever, or discouraged or whatever, it's often because my expectations weren't met. So,
right.
I
got a story for you about that. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
A buddy of mine, one of my oldest friends, is a brilliant restaurateur, has a particular talent for setting up bars and restaurants in the UK. He's got a magic touch. Anyway, he takes over this pub, an old English pub with a thatched roof and stuff by a river, a destination pub, beautiful garden, all that sort of thing. Takes it over, but it was a bit of an old man's pub, dark inside, smoke, all that sort of thing. Takes it over, immediately shuts it for 6 months of
rehabbing.
So he's refurbing it for 6 months, then he reopens it. So I go down to have lunch with him after it's been open for a year. And it's beautiful, big windows, lots of light, great menu, busy, loads of people, doing great. And I'm like, man, how's your first year in business been? He said, fantastic. He said, it's completely exceeded expectations. I said, no kidding. That's great news. What do you think the key to that is? He thought about it. He said, low expectations.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that people shouldn't want good things. I'm all in favor of it. But when we believe that our well-being is attached to things turning out a certain way, we get insecure and sketchy.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you've read books by Benjamin Hardy. Talks a lot about psychology and business.
I know the name. I haven't read his books.
Yeah. He has a book called The Gap and the Gain, but he's all about that. Measuring, looking back rather than forward, because it makes you just a better person to realize how far you've come. But oftentimes we set these audacious goals and then we're disappointed because we didn't hit them. But they were too audacious. They were too big. We knew it when we set them.
I love setting big goals. And one of the traps I fell into in the past was living in the future rather than living in the here and now.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's the key. Set goals as big or as little as makes sense for you. On day one, it makes sense to set a huge goal. And with something else, it might make sense to set a tiny goal. I don't think there are any rules on that. I think you just got to do what makes sense to you.
For sure. For sure. But I guess what I was getting at was our expectations often dictate our attitude or mood but measuring backwards rather than forward. I know I can see on your screen, jamiesmart.com. That's the webpage people go to find all about
Yeah,
you
that's my website and everything's there.
and connect with you. What was something you would give to advice for somebody regarding they just feel stuck? They're listening to this, maybe they're stuck in their job, they're maybe lacking in vision. That would be part of this too, right? Someone's lacking in vision.
Vision can be incredibly powerful and compelling. And what I've found is it's hard to just manufacture it. I found that the most compelling visions are the ones that are given to us, that are give them as insights or as God-given, however they arrive. But I'm going to sound like a one-trick pony, but my suggestion for anyone who's feeling stuck is look into this understanding, because the reason someone's feeling stuck is because their current map of reality is no longer fit for purpose. The reason that's frustrating to someone who feels stuck is they think they've got the right map. They think their internal model of reality is up to date, and it just isn't. And so the thing that's going to help them is having a richer map of reality. And one of the best ways I know to do that is have insights and realizations. So if they start to explore this understanding, that's in the post for them. But the other thing you can do is just do anything. Like go out for a walk, try something new, learn something new, because that's going to enrich your map of reality as well. I've found that when you're feeling stuck, the best thing to do is to see who you are and what you've got going for you, and then look at what you were looking at in that light.
That's good. I've got 4 questions for you. We always close with these. My first question, Jamie, is what's something you're doing right now that your future self, your future Jamie, is going to look back and say, good job, attaboy?
I'm working on a film treatment. I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Diamandis, but he's the founder of Singularity University, and he's created a thing called the X Prize. And the first X Prize was the Ansari X Prize, which was basically a prize of either 10 or $15 million to the first team that could put a spacecraft into orbit twice in a 2-week period and have it return to Earth. So they awarded that prize to the creators of Spaceship One, who won it. But here's the interesting thing. It cost 10 or 15 million bucks to put that prize up, but they drove $500 million of investment in the private space industry we have today. So Diamandis has been running X Prizes ever since. He's done health X Prizes, he's done education X Prizes, all kinds of things. Anyway, he announced a couple of months ago the Future Vision X Prize, because he realized that many of the greatest inventions that we use today were invented by people who saw them in shows like Star Trek and that sort of thing, and went, I could build that, a mobile phone and a tablet. And Diamandis realized that Hollywood mostly is putting out really dystopian visions of the future at the moment. And he widely sees that's a bad idea. Like, we want to be creating positive visions of the future. Anthropic even found that when they trained Claude on positive visions, they got better safety results. So Diamandis has put up an X Prize for $3.5 million for the team that can create the most compelling story about the future. And to do that, you got to put in a film treatment and a trailer. So I'm creating a process of creating a movie about this understanding to see if we can win that prize.
That's awesome.
I'm excited about it. It's fun.
How long of a movie is it?
It's a feature film, but to enter, you just need to do a treatment and a trailer.
Okay.
So if anyone in your audience is amazing at creating AI-generated videos, I'd love to hear from them.
Yeah. For clarifying, what is a treatment? I mean, I understand what a trailer is. What's that mean?
Like a 12-page description of the film that helps someone considering investing in it to visualize it.
Okay. I was curious, I've never heard that term, but that's good.
Yeah, you basically, if you've got a treatment for the film and it gets
like a summary of the film.
Yeah, like a summary of the film, but that gets people into it. Mm-hmm. And then you give that to the scriptwriter who writes the script for the movie.
Beautiful. Cool. If you could go back and speak to your younger self, what sort of advice would you give him?
I wouldn't give him any advice. I would tell him, you're going to be okay. So go for it. I think for much of my early life, I was kind of much more hesitant, tentative, timid in what I did and what I achieved, because no one ever said to me, you can accomplish anything you put your mind to. Or if they said it to me, I never never heard it in a way that I believe. And so if I could sit down with that younger me and win his confidence and say, you can do whatever
Go
you
for it.
want.
Yeah. Imagine Jamie, who you'd be if he would listen.
Well,
and you
who
could go
knows?
back.
That guy might have gone into crazy bullshit and I went off a cliff.
Of course, who knows? But I mean, just think about the possibility. That's what I'm getting at. Like, it'd be cool. Hey, what's a favorite quote or book that has influenced and impacted you?
There are so many books and so many quotes. One of my favorite books is Quantum Psychology by Robert Anton Wilson. That book has been so profoundly influential on me. And one of my favorite quotes is by a guy called Sydney Banks, who said, if the only thing people learn was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. I see that as such a profound statement, and I see the relevance and the value of it every day in my own life, in the lives of my clients, in the lives of the people I see around me. If the one thing people learn, the only thing people learn, was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world.
You know, that's the big underlying part in that book, Who Moved My Cheese, was what would you do if you're not afraid?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
Yeah, we should start each day with that. My last question for you is, if this is your last recording, what does Jamie Smart want the world to know?
That you're capable of far, far more than you think, because you are far, far more than you think. You know, a mentor of mine once said, somewhere in there, in you, is a being greater than you can imagine, seeking expression in this world. I think that's true. I think that's true. And I think it's there in everyone. Every single one of us has a source of truth and richness and beauty and guidance and direction and wisdom and clarity and insight that's beyond anything our intellects can imagine. And if people are willing to open up to that, you'll be amazed by what's possible for you. So I think, you know, that's something that I'd love people to hear, but I can always do with hearing.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I want to give my kids. Like, go out,
beautiful.
do it.
That's a beautiful gift.
Yeah. Do you have any more books coming up? Or just making that film?
I've been working on a book called Change Wizard, which may or may not be coming out in the next 18 months. We'll see. I've got other priorities at the moment, but it's still a passion project of mine.
Isn't it interesting how once you start writing, like, it's always there, right?
Yeah.
That's why I asked, because you've written two. I know you've probably got titles for 3 more in your head.
I can think of all kinds of books that might be fun to write. But the funny thing is, Marty, anything I write is going to be so focused on this understanding that in a way, I'm happy that clarity and results cover it.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I just want to thank you for being on today. Thank you for giving me, I feel like I got a coaching session there for an hour. So.
Oh, nice. It's been a pleasure. You're really, really easy to talk with. It's been really, really enjoyable. Great questions. Anytime.
If this message resonates with you as listeners, then please share it with others and look Jamie up. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you, Marty. That was a huge pleasure.
I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways in which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there.